So let me take you on a little guided tour around Intratown. Excuse the moving video, I'm not fantastic with the video yet. It's just done on my phone, but I'm just walking around my local garden centre, which has this amazing selection of textures, colours, patterns, structures. Oh, it's an ICM dream. Believe me, I've spent about 2 hours photographing in this location. Didn't get very far around all the displays, but it's just absolutely wonderful. And I've just taken a few videos, and you will see the resulting photos afterwards. I'm going to talk you through in Lightroom and Photoshop just to show you them. So I just thought, yeah, it's just me walking around showing you the things that are sort of catching my eye, like these amazing wreath holders here on the left hand side, things like feathers, things like grasses, structures, colours, textures, contrasts, everything that caught my eye. So enjoy the post-processing. Okay, so these are the first set of images I'm going to show you, and I used my new camera for these. I've got a new Nikon Z6 Mark II, which I was very excited to play with. I hadn't actually read the instruction manual or even checked out how to use it before I took it out. So it was kind of hit and miss, and I was very lucky that I got some of these shots. Anyway, I will just show you these ones that I got, and then I'm also going to show you the ones that I took with my phone as well, because you can get some really interesting other results when you use an app in a phone. So anyway, I was just going to show you these through. Some of these you might recognise from things you saw in the video. Some of them might be slightly separate. These photos, these showing you the location photos, are not meant to be good photos. Basically, they're just showing you things that caught my eye. So, for example, this, I noticed the lovely grasses in the wicker basket, and then I noticed these fantastic pots here with these lines and all these colours and sort of textures in them. So I'm just going to show you these ones here first. So from that, this was my straight out of camera ICM. Okay, so I love the colours and I love the textures, and I had a play and I had a few different ones, but this is what I've created from them. I'm not going to run you through all the details of how I got to them because I've got so many. I might save that for a separate video to show you some in detail, but I'm just going to show you how my mind works and how my thought process and my work process works when I go somewhere like this. So this is one that I've just cropped, and if I do just show you, I'll show you in develop mode so you can see on the right hand side some of the things I've done. Basically, I've cropped to a square to accentuate the lines and the contrasts of the colours and the dark and the light. I've just pushed the blacks and the whites a little bit to just do that. That's all I've done on this one. This one here is exactly the same, but I've just trained it to black and white. I don't actually like the black and white because I think the colour brings something extra to it. This looks a little bit flat. I also had a little play. I'd done a different one and I did a 16:9. Again, I feel it's getting a little bit lost. I think probably the square crop is the best crop for this to really accentuate what I did. Okay, the next thing that captured my eye was these beautiful silver sort of tufty things, and then these beautiful gold. Now it's actually a real challenge because you can see how bright the light is in places, and as I said, I just stuck my camera on auto and it chose the focus point for me because I was moving between ICMs and non-ICMs, and it's just a record shot to show you a basic idea of what I was photographing. It's not meant to be a good photo. So just to show you what I created from this, I decided there was no definable direction to move, so you can see that I just did like a little loop, and I quite like this as a standalone image. This is never going to go anywhere. I am never going to share this, do anything with this as an image on its own. However, I'm looking at this going forwards and thinking it will make a great background or a texture for some of my Christmassy double exposures. So this is one that I will sort of put in a box and keep in a folder and keep handy to use for something else, not an image on its own. Now again, there's a record shot. It's a bit blurry. Obviously, this shutter speed was way too slow at 1/2 second to capture this in sharpness, but it's slightly sharper. To show you what I was starting with, I noticed the gold twigs and I noticed the lovely green in the background. Again, non-definable movement because there weren't any obvious movements that I wanted to do. I think I sort of swept slightly to the left on this one. You can see a sort of movement. I just wanted to create a real texture on this one. I then moved a little bit faster and I swept up to the left to just drag all the lines, which I quite liked, but I hated this up in the top. I'd caught a little bit of a light area. So just to show you the one that I've worked on here, I decided to crop it, get rid of that corner, and then have a little play with the colour to try and bring a little bit of gold and blue into this one. The next one here I have, again, just things that caught my eye. I noticed the green and the gold, slightly different textures, and I noticed they were laying against this lovely black background, so I thought I'd have a play. The first one I just did in the gold, and I just literally pulled it down, just did a slight movement downwards. This is completely unprocessed, so I'm thinking this may have opportunities. Again, this may be a background image that I go on to use going forwards. Where are we here? We're here. This was the actual sort of direct image, just the whole thing. Kind of squiggled. You can see I did a very undefined movement here. It's kind of a wiggle, wiggle, wiggle in lots of different directions. I was actually on, let's see up here, 1.3 seconds here, so it's actually quite a long shutter speed for me. I was working with my 50mm lens, so it was giving me some really nice depth of field opportunities. Anyway, I then had a play here just to have a look, and again you can see the highlights are a bit blown, but I love these kind of, when I zoomed in, I actually quite love these squiggles. They almost look like sort of signatures within the image, and the ones that aren't blown out I think are really lovely in gold. So it may be that I sort of move this one or sort of clone over this one and bring another one in. It's not a finished image by any stretch of the imagination, but again, a half and half image. I think it could work really well in combination with another image later. A bit of greenery. I just kept again next to the gold images. Again, I just had a little play. Again, you can see a sort of very unusual movement for me, sort of a little loop. Quite like it. Something about it. Again, thinking about it as a multiple exposure image, not a standalone image. I've just cropped it and just pushed the blacks and the whites a little bit to see what was available here. This one you did see in the video. I love these ginkgo petals. It's actually plastic. These are sort of plastic rubber, but I love the structures and the textures that were going on. This was the ICM I created. This is just straight out of camera. You can see on the right hand side, I have done nothing to this at all, and I actually really love it as it is. It could be an image on its own, but equally it could be an image that I might use for multiple exposure later. This was one of the Christmas trees. You can see there's quite a lot I've got going on here, which is why I'm whizzing through these here. This was one of the Christmas trees, and again, I just loved all the different textures, the structures, the lines, the colours, the compositions. And again, I just had a play. I was really sort of experimenting on this day with just experimenting with different movements, because I couldn't see in my eyes there was a definite obvious vertical or horizontal movement to make, because there were so many objects within the image. You can see these are really blown. If I was to try and correct them, you could bring it back. The highlights, they bother me a little bit in this. They were little tiny fairy lights that were sort of dotted in amongst the trees. I don't feel there's enough movement in here to make them creative. However, this one, yeah, again, I'm not sure looking at it. I love the background. I'm not sure about the gold squiggles. But what I did do was I just had a zoom in, and I think there's something possible that I could play with this. I think maybe if I brought some more of these squiggles in, I could make them more of a feature. At the moment, they're sort of worn off, getting in the way a little bit. This one, I actually turn the camera, and I prefer these squiggles. I'm going to call them squiggles because that's exactly what they are. I actually prefer these squiggles because, interestingly, every single squiggle here is actually slightly different, even though I've made the same camera movement for them all. It's just come out differently depending on how big the squiggles were and how big the lights were. And I actually quite like this. You've got these lovely sort of textures in the background here. And the colours, and this area really sort of appeals to me. It might be a square crop down here. I shall wait and see. And interestingly, with my Nikon Z6 Mark II, I can now see so much better what I am doing. And this isn't an ICM, but this is throwing the image completely out of focus. And I loved how the fairy lights became like a buku. And I just really, really love taking these. And again, not a standalone image, but an image that will definitely be used as part of a combination of images when I do multiple exposure. Lastly, for these camera images, I saw these. Aren't they fantastic? You know, well, whatever rocks your boat. Maybe you don't think they're fantastic, but I did. The colours, the lines, the shapes, the light, I just thought they were really beautiful. So I had a play with ICMing them, and this was my straight out of camera ICM. I decided to use all three of them in this photo. Just loved how the gold was catching, and I just did a vertical movement up here, which works brilliantly for these two, less so for this one. But capturing all three, I decided to just crop in here and just create a 16:9 crop. And then I cropped in just on two of them, and I think this is a far stronger image. Really love this. Love the contrast of the blues and the golds, the lines, the light again. These are the kind of things I'm looking for when I'm photographing weird and wacky things in a garden centre. But it's just like a very quick talk through. Apologies, no details on post-processing really, apart from the basics, but actually that's all I've done on any of these so far. Most of these are going to not be standalone images. They are going to be later used in a multiple exposure combination. So don't think of them as what I think are fantastic images. I'm just sort of looking at them and thinking how they're going to be used with other images. So I'm going to now show you the phone images, just so you can see how different you can create them. Okay, so I'm just going to walk you through now my phone photos. Again, some of them are really not that great. Again, a record shot. You saw me point this out in the video, and I just spotted all these fantastic things that you meant to make door wreaths with. Just loved all the textures, so I was itching to have a play with them. These are all straight out of camera. I've not touched any of them. It's just literally to show you how my my creativity runs when I'm doing this. With this one, I kind of did a looping motion towards me, kind of following the lines of the wood coming out in a sort of round motion. This was, looking at it now, a complete disaster. It's out of focus. It's not just an ICM, it's out of focus. So I think this one will be going ditching in the bin. This was the wreath, the sort of a garland of leaves coming down, and this is what I created just by doing like a little shaking motion next to it to just make everything break up. This was what happened when I went downwards a little bit, both using my camera app now. So all of these I use my in-camera phone app, which is Slow Shutter Cam app for the iPhone. I'm sorry if you're on Android, I'm not sure that there is something that's the same as Slow Shutter Cam app. You can get a free version on iPhone. I highly recommend the paid version. Apparently you can get an awful lot better results. It's not a lot, it's like $1.99, something like that. Highly recommend it. That's one reason why I would keep an iPhone and not move off to any other phone, simply because of this app. I saw these lovely stars made out of straw, and also the background was lovely and blue. The light was fantastic. So I then zoomed in a little bit, and I had a little play. I just twisted slightly to the round a little bit to create this, and I loved the blues and the creams. Again, this one I just moved a little bit more fast around in the loop to create it sort of joining together. Now I do use another app as well on my phone, which is called, let me just check, Average Cam Pro, and this allows you to do like a Pet Ventosa multiple exposure. So there's 4 exposures in here, and I just turn the camera a little bit each time. Again, I'm thinking about multiple exposures later on, not a standalone image here, but I love how I sort of created this circle in the middle of the star. This one was a multiple exposure of 4 images, and I just went round the tree photographing on top of each other, again just in my phone in the app that I was using. I spotted this lovely palm, I think it is. Loved the lines, loved how the light was playing on it, the straight lines. So I just went in and zoomed, and I just followed the lines, and I absolutely love how it accentuates the shadows and the lines on here and the colours. And again, this was another one. It was quite a yellowy one, so I really zoomed in again and just worked on the shadows and the lines, and I love how it really accentuates those. Yeah, here it's just abstract. You wouldn't know what you were looking at. You'd never know this was a palm tree and not a blind on the window or something. I think it's fantastic. And this is straight out of camera, nothing done at all to this. I spotted these fronds of, one was some just plain red berries and some had this sort of pretend silvery snow on it. So I thought they were quite nice. And I noticed them next to each other because of the contrast in the white on one and the plain reds on the other. So I just moved downwards, wiggly motion. You can see here, just not too long to create this one. This one I decided to zoom in just on the plain red berries. And so the white that you're seeing is actually the light just catching on the shiny red berries on this one. This one I went back to the ones that were sort of crystallized with some snow, and I just did a shaking movement to make it look as though it was kind of icing sugar all over them. Again, not a standalone image, most of these aren't, but thinking about using them as multiple exposures later on. You saw this one from my actual camera as well, these gold flowers. There's a big basket, and actually I felt that they were far better. I got a better result with my phone than I did with my camera on this one. I love how the flowers have turned white. They haven't just sort of completely burnt out the highlights. They've kind of gone a whitey, purpley, bluey colour. I love the fact that you've got some big sort of areas of light, and then you've got some other details, and you see these miniature leaves in the background of flowers. I think it's really quite pretty how some of those have come through. And this one was, I think you saw it in the video, this was the sort of pom-pom like silvery thing that was next door to it. Again, I just gave it a shake, and I quite like it for the silveryness and the lines, and the sort of feel you get from this one. This was fantastic, a wall full of all these different textures. It's like, wow, Christmas has come at once. And you'll notice down here, this was where I shot that other picture with the two next to each other, the gold and the green, and also the green that I showed you on the previous video. But anyway, this I could just have stood there all day just photographing all the textures that were in front of me. Here's just a few, and this was another frond. Just like, I love the silverness of it. These were just straight pictures that I just took of things that were capturing my eye, that I maybe might go an ICM. So this one I went back to, it just like with these little crystallized flowers. They're supposed to look like blossom. Well, when you use an ICM, they do actually become blossom, which is quite cool. And I really like the black background as well. Again, not cropped or anything yet, so we shall see what I do with that one. This one you did see on my other camera. Again, you get a slightly different result, and I chose to do it portrait in here rather than landscape, which is cool. This one was just a sort of feathery heather, dried heather plant that I really quite liked, and I just shook the camera to give it more fluff, more sort of less definable detail, which I really liked. And lastly, the tree again you saw this in the other video. This time I just picked up on a little bit of something. You can see this time where I was talking about the lights that came through on the other ICMs that I took, but I just love these sort of straight lines and then the circles and the lovely textures in the pine cones here. So I just had a play, and this time the lights, in using the phone, the lights aren't too obtrusive. They come through as sort of extra markings rather than blown out highlights, which I quite liked, and the same with this one. So that was just a walkthrough to go with the previous photo walkthrough, just to see, allow you to see what sort of captures my eye and my thought processes regarding contrast, light, the kinds of movements I make, how I decide what I'm going to do with them. Now, most of these photos will never see the light of day again as individual photos. I specifically went out on this day to take photos just to make multiple exposures. So my idea was all about creating contrast, capturing Christmassy details, and then capturing things that I could combine with to make things like Christmas cards for later. So I hope you enjoy that. As always, give me a like, subscribe if you're not subscribing. If you enjoyed it, please let other people know. And there will be other videos to follow this on post-processing, and also other things that I found when I walked around the garden centre. This was just like one tiny little bit of the garden centre. So you're probably going to get a number of videos that follow this when I've got time to show you my trip around and sort of the whole process that I went through. So I look forward to seeing you soon again.